Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brody and today we're going to be talking about the world record progression for the Pittsburgh Light Rail Challenge. I got this idea from my friend Matt who did this challenge on the New York City subway. Be sure to check his video out, the link is in the description. Also in the description is the spreadsheet I made after my speedrun to calculate everything. Alright, now for some background knowledge. What exactly is the Pittsburgh Light Rail Challenge? It's a task to either stop at or pass through all stations on the light rail that runs from the north shore of Pittsburgh southbound to the town of Bethel Park. You have to either start at the end of the Silver Line at Library Station or South Hills Village, which is the end of the Red Line. You must take the train northbound all the way up to Allegheny Station, transfer to the other line, and ride it back southbound to the end of the other line. Now you may notice there's also a blue line on this map, but just ignore it, as it's not needed for this challenge. You can get to all stations by taking both the red and silver lines. The fare is $2.75 per line, however if you buy a Connect card that you can get at most major stations, the fare is reduced to $2.50. Now let's talk about the historical aspects of the Pittsburgh Light Rail. The modern system was completed in 1987, however you can still take streetcars and trains around the area as far back as the 50s and 60s. Today's light rail system is similar to the 80s but has changed a lot. For example, there were two whole lines that previously existed that are not in service anymore. The first one was the Brown Line, which ran through Allentown and shut down in 2011. It eventually reconnected with the other lines at First Avenue and continued on, but still went to many unique stations, branching out at South Hills Junction. You can actually still ride the Brown Line rails today. If there's any sort of construction or maintenance towards the north end of the light rail, you will detour through the Brown Line route. Sometimes on weekday nights past 8 p.m. you can also ride the Brown Line route. However, it won't actually stop as none of the stations exist anymore. It's still a cool thing you can do though. Now on to the second defunct line, the Drake Line. This line ran until 1999 and is mostly forgotten about. It started at Castle Shannon and rode along the Red Line until it split off at Dorchester. It then traveled further into Bethel Park, going to 6 more unique stations. None of these 6 stations exist today, however there is still a cutout in the trees on the side of the road on the corner of Bethel Church Road and McMurray Road in Upper St. Clair, these being the remains of the concrete from Drake Loop Station, the end of the line. Now, for the final historical aspect, let's talk about cut stations. In 2012, 13 stations were going to be cut from the Pittsburgh Light Rail system. However, Smith Road and Sandy Creek ended up surviving the cut and still exist as stations today. These 11 stations that were discontinued are Traymore, Coast, Bowstead, Nield, Kelton, Martin Villa, Santa Barbara, Mine 3, Lindermer, Center, and Latimer. Some remains still exist today, such as the stairs at Traymore or the train crossing at Santa Barbara. Nield and Kelton stations remain untouched, but are not in service anymore. Also to mention, Pennant Station, between Dawn and Westfield, suddenly closed in 2021. The full station exists today, but like the others, is not in service. Good thing I didn't do this before 2012, or else I'd have to do a full extra line, plus 12 other stations. As far as I could find, no one has actually done this speedrun before. Sure, there are a few videos of people taking full rides from one end of the line to the other, but those ones aren't properly timed and are much longer than what I did, and have many cuts and edits. So far as I'm aware, I have the best documented time of this out here. Will I do it again? Likely yes, but I wanted to lay out the foundation of the speedrun in this video. Let's get into the part you've all been waiting for, the speedrun itself. I'll be putting some things on screen while I'm talking about the ride, these being the station name and the segment. The segment starts when one station is passed or arrived at. The next segment is recorded when the train either stops at or goes past the next station. For example, the Mesta segment is 51.73 seconds, because that was the time it took for me to go from Mesta to Lytle. The next segment would begin as soon as the train stopped at Lytle, and that segment wouldn't end until I stopped or passed at Hillcrest, in which a new segment would be started again. Obviously, the most optimal segments are the ones where you have a flying start past one station, and don't stop at the next station either to keep all your speed. You'll see this a decent amount of the run, especially early on. I also decided to do this on a weekday morning after everyone had already left for work, so there would be much less people on the train, and in turn, less stops to make. Enough rambling, it's time to begin the speedrun. The speedrun started at 8:59 a.m. at Library Station, starting at the end of the Silver Line. It took a bit longer than normal to accelerate, but we made it to West Library and did not stop. From there, we made the short ride over to Sandy Creek, once again not stopping. After Sandy Creek, we passed Beagle, and as expected, did not stop. The first few stations on the Silver Line barely have any riders, and I'm very surprised Pittsburgh Regional Transit hasn't made the decision to cut these stations, especially Sandy Creek, which is originally supposed to be discontinued. The train finally stopped for the first time at the next station, King School Road. Even with that stop, the train was making great time, except right before the next station, Logan Road, we got stuck at a very long red light, slowing down the King School Road segment. Eventually passing by Logan Road, there would be another stretch of no stopping as Sarah went by quickly, and Monroe was unsurprisingly not stopped at either. The next station was South Park Road, which did pick up passengers, but as with King School Road, another long red light slowed down the ride. Passing through Meston without incident, the next station was Lytle, which was stopped at, but also where we ran into Pittsburgh's favorite thing, construction. If you're not from the area, Pittsburgh always has insane amounts of construction no matter where you go, and you can't avoid it no matter what, even if you take public transport. This led to a very long segment between this and Hillcrest, but even though we didn't stop at Hillcrest, we had yet another incident that slowed us down. The red line, coming northbound from South Hills Village, beat us to a split at the track. This slowed down the entire ride by at least 30 seconds and was the worst delay in the whole speedrun. The next station was Washington Junction, which was stopped at, and is another major station on the line. This is usually where people transfer lines at. Passing through the next station, Smith Road, was unsurprising. We ran into construction yet again after Smith Road. It just seemed like we couldn't catch a break towards the beginning of the run. St. Anne's was next, which was stopped at. Willow, which came next, was not stopped at, which came as a big surprise to me. Typically multiple passengers get on or off at Willow every time. From there, we made a stop at a very popular station, Memorial Hall. The next station, Killarney, was passed by. McNeely came next, which we did stop at, as with the next stop, South Bank. About 20 stations in, only once were there 2 stops in a row. After that, the next 3 stations are Denise, Bon Air, and Boggs. I've never seen a single person ever get on or off at these stations, and when you do take the light rail, you can expect to never stop at these 3. The next station was South Hills Junction, another line transfer station, which we did make a stop at. From here, we would stop at every single station until we came back to South Hills Junction on the red line. Though this does make complete sense because now the line had reached the city and many people got on and off at the next stops. This part of the line is also very slow due to high amounts of passengers, a chance for buses to come onto the tracks, and a long tunnel connecting South Hills Junction and the next stop, Station Square. From there, you have to go across a bridge and over the river to get to the next stop, First Avenue. This is always a fun part of the ride as you can take in the beautiful views of the river and of the city. Pulling out of First Avenue, it was finally time to go underground. After a short ride, we reached Steel Plaza. Leaving Steel Plaza, the shortest ride so far in the city, we reached Wood Street. Wood Street is another major station which provides access to PNC Park. The next stop is Gateway, which is the most populated station on the entire light rail, with over 5,300 passengers that get on per week. Next we went under the river to reach Northside, a huge underground station. Finally, after Northside, we came above ground to reach the final stop on the line, Allegheny. Allegheny Station is on the North Shore, which drops you off right at Acrisure Stadium. Expect the stop to be very crowded during Steeler games. After getting off at Allegheny, I had to transfer to the Red Line. I got off the train at 9:53, and the next Red Line train didn't come until 10, so I was just hanging out. When 10 came, the train still didn't come back and came 4 minutes late, which lost me time. I was lucky enough not to stop at as many places on the Silver Line. If I'd made it to Allegheny too late, I would have had to wait until 10:15 at the earliest to the next train, and would have lost a substantial amount of time. I was at Allegheny Station for 11 minutes and 40.43 seconds waiting to transfer lines. Leaving Allegheny, it was a long ride back out of the city. We stopped at Northside, Gateway, Wood Street, Steel Plaza, First Avenue, Station Square, and made the loop back to South Hills Junction. After leaving South Hills Junction, I had no idea that some of the segments coming up would be unbelievably fast. Most stops have been well over 1 or 2 minutes, some going over 3, however many segments on the Red Line past South Hills Junction ended up being well under a minute. The first unique station on the Red Line was Palm Garden, which was not stopped at. After Palm Garden was Dawn, which is the least populated station on the entire light rail with just 7 passengers that get on per week. Dawn wasn't stopped at either, and it led to one of the fastest times in between stations of the day. Now, there would be a period of high activity outside the city where 11 out of the next 13 stations would be stopped at. The first station that came on that streak was a stop at Westfield, stopping at Fallowfield right after. Hampshire came next, but something interesting is that although Fallowfield and Hampshire were both stopped at, the time between these 2 stations was one of the fastest of the day. It was the fastest time between 2 stops by far. After the stop at Hampshire, Velasco's stop came and went quickly, and we were on to Shiras, which broke the streak of stops as we flew past the station. Another streak of 3 stops in a row came as we moved to Stevenson. After that, stopping at Potomac in under a minute. Going between Potomac and Dormont Junction took a bit of time, but not as long as between Dormont Junction and Mount Lebanon, which is one of the longest stretches on the system without a stop. Mount Lebanon is one of the most popular stations in the entire light rail line and is the most popular station outside the city, with nearly 3,000 passengers that get on every week, and even edges out First Avenue, which only has 1,600. But shockingly, we didn't stop at Mount Lebanon and just continued past it. Coming up now is a streak of 4 stops, going to Poplar, Arlington, Castle Shannon, and Overbrook Junction, all without issue. After Overbrook Junction, we came upon St. Anne's for the second time and flew past Smith Road again. These two segments were absolutely wild. St. Anne's segment took under 40 seconds and Smith Road just took over 45, which were nearly the two fastest segments in a row, just barely being beaten out by West Library and Sandy Creek. Pulling into Washington Junction, those transferring lines hopped off once again, and we moved through to the final few stations, those unique to the red line south of Washington Junction. The first after Washington Junction is Caswell, and after that is Highland, getting another sub 45 second segment for Caswell, due to not stopping at either station. Bethel Village came next, and after a brief stop, we moved on to Dorchester, getting there in just over a minute. After stopping at Dorchester, there was just one stretch of track left. At 10:47 a.m., the train pulled into South Hills Village Station 1 minute and 7 seconds after leaving Dorchester, and it was over. I completed 100% of the stations of the Pittsburgh Light Rail in 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 5.62 seconds. It was an amazing journey to complete, and a world record has now been set for the Pittsburgh Light Rail Challenge. But that's not it just yet. Let's give a summary of the challenge. The red line was a lot more active. Although it stopped a lot more than the silver line, it traveled much faster, and there was no construction or red lights the entire time while on the red line. I think it's also worth checking out some other statistics in various categories. The silver line from one end to another took me 52 minutes and 29.75 seconds, leaving from Library and arriving at Allegheny. The red line from end to end took a lot less time, finishing the journey in 43 minutes and 55.44 seconds. Another area I'd like to talk about is the free fare zone. The free fare zone runs between First Avenue and Allegheny stations, and you can run between these all you want for completely free. As long as you don't go south of First Avenue, you won't pay a fare. On a 100% station speed run, you pass through the free fare zone twice, but my best time for going through it was 10 minutes and 22.98 seconds. The final statistic I wanted to look at is the average time between stations. For the entire light rail ride, it was an average of 1 minute and 38.04 seconds. The silver line took an average of 1 minute and 44.99 seconds between stations, and the red line significantly beat out the silver line, taking an average of just 1 minute and 27.85 seconds between stations. I also decided to measure the free fare zone, but the average for that was 2 minutes and 4.06 seconds, significantly slower than everything else. Well, that was certainly a ride, wasn't it? It was awesome to go on this challenge and fully document it. I'll be sure to try this challenge again and see if I can beat this time, and maybe make a small update video. Hope you all enjoyed the speedrun and the world record progression for the Pittsburgh Light Rail Challenge.